Joey Streeman? Okay. I'd like to call to order the Town of Delafield Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, October 22nd. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You would please call the roll.
Supervisor Mahoney-Ogden.
Present.
Supervisor Miller.
Here.
Supervisor Wolfley.
Present.
Supervisor Michaels.
Present.
Chairman Kranek.
Present.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, citizens' comments. Public comments from citizens regarding items on or not on the agenda. The board may not engage in discussions with a citizen making the comments. Individual presentations are limited to 3 minutes, and citizens shall follow the rules set forth in section 2.04, paren 1, paren D of the town code. Is there anyone who'd like to come and speak or provide public comments this evening? Hearing no public comments, I'm going to close the public comment period and move on to item 5. Approval of September 24th, 2024 Town Board minutes.
I would motion to approve the minutes from September 24th. Second.
Motion is second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item would be actions on vouchers submitted for payment. There are no amendments or to the 2024 budget, so I'd look for a motion to approve accounts payable and payroll.
Motion to approve payment of checks 67975 through 67983 and checks 678,987 through 68011 in the amount of $734,650.33, and checks 6812 and checks 68014 through 68033 the amount of $50,865.47. Additionally, payroll checks. Move to approve the payrolls dated October 11th, 2024 in the amount of $16,761.05 and payroll dated October 25th, 2024 in the amount of $16,405.60. Second.
Motion is second to approve accounts payable and payroll. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item, communications for discussion of possible action. First item would be a Lake Patrol update, if you'd like to give one, Supervisor Mahoney-Ogden.
Certainly, we had met actually before our last meeting, and then we realized we hadn't put it on. It was just this, and typically, I just said, we had 2 of our supervisors attend, so it was the first meeting that I had been at, and it was apparently that we don't really meet a lot. I think the biggest change was just that maybe we'll meet sooner, prior to the boating season next year. I think there was discussion of buoys that need to be replaced, discussion of boater safety, different ways to kind of skin the cat and offer opportunities. And then we had a few citizens come, especially right here on our board, just talking a little bit about, and I think I went on record for saying there haven't been any secret meetings about banning wake boating on Pewaukee Lake. Trustee Grabowski suggested that they're going to form a committee to, well, form a committee isn't the right word. He primarily is going to lead the charge and work with Tom Kep to just gather research. And I suggested that we do that, just gather research and education. And if people had opinions, that's who they're putting it to his attention, Trustee Grabowski. We haven't met about it. There was discussion, I think, and lots of rumors perhaps, but there had not been any meetings. That was the first actually I had met him. And so that's really the only other update. I'm hopeful that we'll meet, as opposed to meeting at the end of the season, that we will obviously, it sounds like, Joe, you did meet in April. I got this impression at the meeting that they typically don't meet, but hopefully this year we will meet in the beginning of the boating season in case there are any other kind of suggestions and boating guidelines that we can do. And that was it.
You. Next item is the Welshire Farms Development Update. You have any update, Dan, you want to provide?
Have they paved the road over there on the? Yeah, if you want to give one. As far as, before you guys give one, just so you know, there were some complaints a few weeks ago from when the Diggers Hotline was supposed to mark a line, and they did not mark a main power line that was part of Brookstone Circle. They were out of power for about 8 hours, I believe. And so that was repaired. There were some complaints about dust as well. We did meet one of the persons who was complaining out on site and with the contractor who enforced more water being sprayed on the site during really dry periods, especially if they're moving a lot of traffic from the southern site to the northern site. When we went out, we were out there last when they were doing compaction, and that seemed to go very well. And I believe that the curbs are in and that you guys have stone down. But yeah, I'll leave it to Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan Frisch, Newman Developments. The Crooked Creek Court is paved as of today, so that's the latest update. In the southern portion, we expect to be working on utilities for the next 2 to 3 weeks, with the intent of paving in the next 30 days. So those are the big updates. As Dan said, we did meet with one of the neighbors regarding dust control. So thank you for staff for coordinating that. I think it's under control, and we have addressed that with the contractor. Certainly, it was a challenge with the dry weather we've had, but regardless, it had to be discussed. So,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then the other communication was communication we got today from a resident regarding our sign ordinance. Look to see sign ordinance discussion on a future town board agenda, as
I didn't see it.
this election season has been very taxing on town staff.
An email
Okay.
sent today.
Next item, unfinished business. Discussion and possible action on a residential lighting ordinance. This was tabled at our August 27th meeting.
Chairman Kranek, do you think it'd be pertinent to wait till the end to take this item up and go through new business?
If there's a motion by the board to make such motion, seeing that we have other folks in the audience,
Oh, sure.
I would entertain a motion.
I would motion to move unfinished business to after item 9 in the agenda.
Second.
Motion second to move the unfinished business to item 9 in the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We will skip unfinished business and take it up after item 9. Let's move to new business. Discussion and possible action on the recommendation from the Plan Commission to approve the following zoning code changes. A recommendation to adopt ordinance 2024-09, an ordinance to rezone the property located on the east side of Cushing Park Road, approximately 980 feet south of Abbott's Road, from A1 Agricultural District to A3 Suburban Home District. Tax key number is DELT 0841-029-002. Engineer Barbeau.
All right, this particular property is a vacant piece of property on the east side of Cushing Park Road, about 900 feet south of Abbott's Road. It's currently zoned A1 agricultural. That zoning district was put on it a long time ago. Currently in our code, it's our 40-acre zoning for primarily ag. This particular property owner wanted to come into compliance with the code, and so the property is just under 3 acres. And so by rezoning it to an A3 suburban home district, which allows a minimum lot size of 2 acres, then that would bring that into conformance. There are adjacent properties, both to the north and to the south, that over the last many years have changed from A1 to either A2 or A3 to come into compliance. It would still remain residential in that area. The Plan Commission had a public hearing, and there was recommendation to approve it, and it passed 4-0, I think?
4-0.
5, was it, we had 4?
Before.
I had 4-0 on that at the Plan Commission level.
Yeah, so this is basically just bringing the lot into more conformance.
Um,
zoning, so.
A1s to A3s on Cushing Park Road should just be a standing agenda item at this
Yeah.
point. I would motion to approve the request to amend zoning on the tax key number DELT 0841029002 from A1 Agriculture to A3 Suburban Home District.
I second.
Motion is second to adopt the ordinance to change the zoning from A1 to A3. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item, item 2, is the recommendation from the Plan Commission to approve the request by Ryan Frisch, Newman Developments, Inc. for the approval of the final plat for Welshire Farm subdivision located south of Lake Country Trail and east of High Ridge Addition, number 1 subdivision. This is for the 8 lots off of Crooked Creek. Engineer Barbeau.
Right, the subdivision plat, the final plat, is currently available for us to approve. What that does is that actually creates the lot, once it's signed and recorded, that actually creates the lots, and then they can sell the lots, and building permits can be issued on that. We wouldn't allow building permits until it's paved, but now we hear it's paved, so they would be in line pretty quickly to be able to potentially start some homes late this year, early next year on that. The plat is in conformance with the preliminary plat. It's only that portion on the east end of Crooked Creek, 8 lots as mentioned. All those lots meet the requirements of the zoning code for that area. The document gets reviewed by a number of entities. One is the State of Wisconsin Department of Administration, and then also Waukesha County, as well as the town. They all get review options on that. We did get, just last week, we got Waukesha County's comments on that, or I should say the developer got those, and we get a copy of those as well. I had reviewed it back in September. They have addressed all my comments except one comment, and that was related to easements. I'll just explain that a little bit. On the plat, there's a number of areas where there's, I'll just use an example, a 10-foot public drainage easement is noted on the plat. And I've got kind of a pet peeve of mine, which is those easements, if they're stated like that, they're very vague, and they lead to a lot of questioning years from now. We have old plats in the town where it says easement, and it says nothing else, and no one knows, well, whose easement is it, and who's got the rights to that, and what can we do with that? Can we walk on that? What can we do with it? And so one of my pet peeves is, let's get that easement defined better, which means like the purpose, the rights, who has the rights, who's responsible to maintain the easement, get those questions answered. It can be done in 2 ways. One is to create a separate document, record that, and then you have a document number that goes onto the plat. The other way is to put the actual the items that I mentioned right onto the plat. They do have well, on the next plat you'll see a bunch of easements as well, and some of those are already defined on there. On the next part of the development final plat. I made that as a part of a comment, but the county does have a number of comments that need to be addressed. So and the Plan Commission reviewed this and made a recommendation to approve, subject to review of the comments. So I'm recommending approval of the final plat dated August 9th, 2024, subject to resolution of outstanding comments in my email to Ryan Frisch of Newman, dated October 18th, 2024, and resolution of Waukesha County plat review comments dated October 17th, 2024, prior to execution of the plat by the town.
Waukesha County email date was
October
17th.
October 18th.
What was your email date?
I'm sorry. October 17th was the county's plat, when we got
Okay.
the county's comments. October 17th was the county's comments. I sent an email back to them with the comment about easements on the 18th.
Okay.
Okay. I would motion to approve the final plat for Welshire's Farm dated August 9th, 2024 for the location of east of High Ridge Addition Number 1 subdivision at the east end of Crooked Creek Road, subject to the resolution of outstanding easement issues detailed on October 18th and county issues detailed October 17th.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the plat dated August 9th, subject to review of all comments provided by the county on October 17th and by the town on October 18th. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item, item B, would be discussion of possible action on a landscape maintenance agreement for the property owners of Welshire Farms. That was in our packet. Does Administrator Green have any comments to add about that item?
Yeah, so we started off with an agreement that was a little bit more extensive than this, and we brought it to our attorney who reviewed it. He was trying to understand the ultimate goal or of what we're trying to do, and the language was very specific to the developer, and so he wanted something that was specific. It was not just for the developer, but for the HOA down the line, so it would be a recorded document as opposed to just a signed agreement that would carry over from one owner to the other. So that's what's in front of you. It's been vetted by our attorney. It's been sent to Newman. They had a couple of minor tweaks that were not of any consequence that we included in the final agreement. And so my recommendation is approval. This was discussed when we had our landscape, the R.A. Smith landscape architect out, and this was his recommendation to have something on file so we know that when trees, die or we have issues with just maintenance of those HOA-owned lands, that we have an agreement in place and recorded.
Is this the first time we've taken this step to make this sort of official
With
in your
other-
tenure with a developer?
With my tenure,
Yeah,
I've only been
yeah.
here 5 years, but Tim,
Yeah. I know it's the first time based off Brian's look, so. Well, good. I mean, that's positive. I appreciate all the people that put time into this, including the owners of Welshire Farm, that, the town continues to take steps to make this the strongest development that we've ever put forward, regardless of how everyone feels about it. But we have detailed in here 450 trees and 451 shrubs, which is something that was very important to many of us when we went through this process. And so this only takes the next step of firming it up to make sure that they'll continue to be a part of the property.
Do I look for a motion to adopt the
I
main?
had one question on
Sure.
just because section A, number 11. Right. No outside storage of boats, trailers, buses, trucks, campers, or other vehicles to be deemed unsightly.
I think you're actually reading the High Ridge.
You're reading High Ridge.
Oh, all right,
Yeah.
cool, then
That's
never
the
mind.
next one.
We'll wait in a second.
I would motion to approve a landscape maintenance agreement for the property owners of Welshire Farms.
Second.
Motion is second to adopt the landscape maintenance agreement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. The landscape maintenance agreement is adopted by the town. Next item, discussion of possible action on the approval of an amendment to the declaration of restrictions for High Ridge subdivision. Administrator.
Joe!
yeah, so this is High Ridge proposing an amendment to their HOA docs. Is it based on our municipal code, Tim, that we have to approve these changes? Okay. Or it's just common practice that we do? Okay.
And how often and why now again? How often and why now?
We're adding homes.
There.
Yeah, so they have a set of rules that their subdivision has to follow, similar to what we've approved in new subdivisions. And when their HOA board wants to make changes, they can't just arbitrarily make changes to the document. They have to be approved per our ordinance by this body. Whether or not it's any consequence to us, in most cases it's not. A lot of times it's just the change in the architecture of the board itself or the structure of the board. Or in this case, there are some minor changes. That you can see the track change document of what they're proposing. One portion is just changing the word developer to association, which was never done, probably should have been done when the developer had transferred over ownership completely to the association. There's changes to adding the legal description. They're slightly changing their exterior wall allowance to a fiber cement siding, or allowing that. small changes like that. Me and Tim reviewed it. We didn't see anything that it goes against our code, and that's the main reason why we approve these at the board level, is to make sure that there's nothing in their restrictions that goes against our zoning code, or our town code. So the staff would recommend approval.
Yeah, and I'm less concerned about it because it's their own enforcement.
Well, I commend High Ridge for caring, for updating, for continuing to care about their subdivision, and making it better. I mean, I think Supervisor Agnew, you would agree that they've made some light bulb changes in here which are positive, and I think it's a very in my mind, seeing this in an HOA document is the model that I think the town should see going forward, right? My initial comments on the first lighting ordinance was that I think this belongs in an HOA document. And when I see it presented to us and I see the neighborhood coming together and saying this is what makes sense for our little quarter of the town, that's, I think, the proper way to handle this moving forward. I think it's great when these HOAs continue to be engaged and not let these things go, so.
My comment, and I don't know what their thoughts would be on this, but in terms of the lamppost and the bulb, which again is good that they had put that not to exceed, I might have said 60 as opposed to 70, but either way, do we want to ask clarification, or do they have an opinion on the not dusk to dawn? You know, so that just that it can be turned off and on.
I think that's a stretch from the agenda item that's listed. I think we can talk
Well,
about lighting.
but it specifically has to do with them. That would just be something I would ask anybody else from High Ridge. Just
But this is their own.
clear.
Their,
Right.
it's their declaration.
I get it. I'm just saying, if they were looking, they may want to clarify. I was asked somebody. But I don't know if we can't, but that would just be, again, I know it's not on here. They might want to consider that. That was my only suggestion.
But I think that the fundamental question that you're asking gets at sort of the authority that we have versus the authority that we have to review the document, right? I mean, the HOA, it's not a single homeowner that can come in here and make changes to this. They have bylaws, they have processes. I'm sure they've been working on this for a long time. Nobody gets paid to do it. So they've come to some sort of agreement as a neighborhood that this is something that can govern all of them. Our role in reviewing this document is to make sure that it's not out of step with the town code, right? So, this is, I think, an important distinction between where people that have come together to self-govern themselves versus us as a governmental body coming top-down, right? That's the big difference between dusk to dawn, and that's the big difference between some of these issues that we talk about where they've agreed to this, we're making sure it's not out of step with state law or town code, and that's theirs to run with from here. So that's just a general response.
Yeah, I would concur that our role is to ensure that it's not in conflict with any of the town codes and,
And if we were to do a town code and have dusk to dawn wasn't permitted in new light fixtures, that's all I'm just bringing it up because we're in the process of talking lights. I think it's awesome that you're addressing it. It sounds like we've got some people here perhaps that are from there, so I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think if code changes, then
Right.
it supersedes the document that they have, but.
Right.
so I'd look for
Yep.
a motion to approve the amendment.
Motion to approve the amendment to the declaration of restrictions for High Ridge subdivision.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item, discussion and possible action on the appointment of Jennifer Janisic as chairperson for the Town Plan Commission. As everybody may or may not know, Mr. Fitzgerald's appointment as chairman of the Town Plan Commission ran out at the end of September, and he asked not to be reappointed. So currently, the Town Plan Commission is without a chairperson. And giving how the youth of the Plan Commission versus previous years, I think Jennifer has a good tenure and a good background and somebody who would help carry the Plan Commission forward as we look to add additional people as vacancies occur on the Plan Commission in the future.
I would motion to approve the appointment of Jennifer Janisic as chairperson for the Plan Commission.
Second.
Motion is second to accept the appointment of Jennifer Janisick as chairperson to the Plan Commission. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item is the discussion of possible action on the 2024 tax collection agreement with Waukesha County. Any comments, Mr. Administrator?
Oh, that's
Green?
me, isn't it? Yeah, so we received an updated tax collection agreement. I received an email from Pamela Reeves, the treasurer for Waukesha County. They've made no increases from last year to this year, which is great considering everything else is going up. And they noted that, and the reason why they are not proposing any changes. They collect their taxes, so I think we should approve it.
No, it's a good thing. It frees up staff time, and it's really worked out well over the last couple of years since we've been doing this, so.
Motion to approve the 2024 tax collection agreement with Waukesha County.
Motion is second to adopt the tax collection agreement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item, discussion of possible action on the 2025 Lake Country Fire and Rescue operating and capital budget. As Administrator Green outlined in his memo dated October 22nd, the elected community leaders and administrators met on September 24th over in Wales to sit down and talk about the budget moving forward. The city of Delafield requested a funding change and stated that their bottom line number is $1.8 million. And they are requesting a change in the funding formula. We kind of entertained them a little bit and said, okay, what would it look like if we changed the formula from the 65% to the 50%? As the memo outlines, a change in the funding formula at a status quo 4647 budget means the town's contribution is an additional 23.6%, and our contribution would be 1.32 million versus kind of our contractual under the current IMA. It should be like 1.3 on a 4.8 budget. So we can discuss as a board how we feel we should move forward. I know as we went through our budget workshop, we have a CPI plus 2 budget. So I don't know if Dan has any comments or thoughts, or the board, or who wants to start, whether Mr. Michaels or.
Yeah, just to clarify one thing before Dan gives a longer explanation. So the city approved a 4.6 budget, is that right? And that is with them contributing the correct amount, or does it require?
It requires a funding formula change.
So they approved a higher budget while keeping the amount that they pay the same.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and just a little longer explanation of my memo and what has occurred over the past couple of weeks. As Steve mentioned, the city did approve I believe it's that 4647 budget, and that is a status quo budget of roughly 9.5% increase from last year to this year, and that is to maintain status quo of the fire department budget. But they approved it contingent on a base fee formula change. Right now, the base funding formula accounts for 65% of the fire budget. At our meeting, it was a consensus that we bring some type of a change because that was the city's request, and so we entertained the idea to bring it back to the boards. So the city's funding formula is based on 50% of the base being run through the funding formula, and the other 50% being run through that 33% mix of the population, the net, or the total valuation, and then the call volume. That was brought to Genesee. Genesee didn't motion on that at all. They approved funding a 4.8 budget at the current funding formula. So right there we have two contradicting approvals, which basically means
opposite
we're
ends.
back to ground zero again. So I wanted to bring forward basically what those numbers look like in the town sense. So the funding, if we change the funding formula, basically what the city approved, we would have to contribute 1.32 million. which increases our percentage from 22.67 to 23.6. So almost 1% more we will have to contribute. Keeping the current funding formula, if we just did CPI plus 2%, you can see we'd be at 1.218, so about $100,000 less to do a CPI plus 2 budget, which at this point, a CPI plus 2 budget, the fire department would have to make cuts. They wouldn't be able to keep status quo. At a 4.8 budget, which is the last proposal, under our current funding formula, the contribution from the town's end would be $1,312,000. And I think that just shows, just changing that base fee from 65% to 50%, we would pay $8,000 less and contribute to a 4.8 budget for the fire department, as opposed to $150,000 less for the fire department, just because of that funding change. I was very upfront with the fire chief that there's probably not a way that our community would agree to changing a funding formula to basically supplement the city's portion of the
You're
budget.
subsidizing residents of the city of Delafield.
And so,
Our tax dollars would move to them.
so the Genesee thought was they would contribute their percentage of the 4.8 budget, and then everyone else can contribute what they want to contribute. Well, in my opinion, that's just another way of changing the funding formula, because somebody else is contributing less than what we are, and they're not living up to the IMA. So the question is what we do now, and do we feel comfortable with the CPI plus 2, knowing there'll be cuts? I have thrown around some ideas with the fire chief on keeping a CPI plus 2 budget for our contributions, but then using some other funds that may be at his disposal, whether it's monies left over from this year, or maybe in conjunction with shifting some of the capital monies to operating in order to meet that status quo budget. But right now, we don't really have a budget that's been approved by the fire board that we all can agree on, and so we're basically back to where we were last year.
Well, I'll happily kick that off. I might express my frustration in the fact that we agreed to spend the money and pay for a third-party study on the funding formula that has obviously not come back yet. Do we have any anticipation on when that's going to be done, or when?
I believe they're starting it now or very
Done by the
soon.
first of the year.
Yeah, so like, what, 3 to 4 months, from what I
Do
remember?
we just wait and sit tight
Well,
for that?
We got to approve a budget before then.
That was the discussion we had prior to this, that why would we change a funding formula now? Let's wait till
Right.
the subject matter experts come back with
Which I
either a
agree with,
recommendation.
right? We
100%.
That's my feeling.
we kind of threw a bone and said we're willing to do
Correct.
this,
And
right?
that's, yeah, sorry.
No.
You know, I mean, I guess that's my frustration, is like we've agreed, and all of the communities have agreed to pay for and foot the bill for this, and then explore the options on what a third party says. You know, the communities that have enacted a fire fee are willing to do what it is to get to a $4.8 million budget. Where we went to referendum, I believe we asked for the correct amount for a referendum. The city also went for a referendum, did not take the recommended amount or ask for the recommended amount, and also instill the fire fee. Is that correct, or is it they
The
just
referendum was to install a fee.
Okay, and so, you know, I mean, I guess it's incredibly frustrating. I feel like we're being held hostage to, you know, the city holding this over us, while the balance of the communities have asked their citizenry to do what they felt was right. So, here's my thoughts, you know, expressing my frustration.
Thanks for the update, because that was one, thank you for bringing that up, Supervisor Wolfley. So the the study is supposed to happen soon-ish, the outcome.
You know, I guess my thoughts on that is, if you're gonna do this, like, why are you, if you're staking your flag in the ground at CPI plus 2 and not moving off of it, and holding the other communities to a budget where there will need to be cuts, I'm far less inclined to consider any changes that comes back in the third-party study, right? Like, there should be, if they're asking us to make have an expense and then consider a change moving forward, like, there should be some goodwill on the backside of saying, okay, well, in the meantime, for this budget, then we can anticipate a change like this. And I think that it's not negotiating in great faith without coming off of exactly what it is that they want while we're spending money.
Yeah, it's certainly very, very frustrating that, you know, one community is jeopardizing the public safety of all 7 communities. You know, clearly the fire chief and the fire board are coming and telling the communities, this is what I need to run a department. And, you know, yes, we have an obligation to say this is what the checkbook looks like, but, you know, our community did go to referendum. The referendum did pass to, you know, hire the 14 individuals, and, you know, we have yet to get to that dollar amount, and that dollar amount got eaten up with, you know, some of the inflation that we've seen too, so.
I mean, the if you continue to play this out, right, so let's fast forward to 3 years from now, right, and the fire board says, hey, we need an increase again. And so now communities either need to increase the fire fee or go to referendum again. So what's to prevent any one of the communities from not asking for the correct number and then just say, well, it doesn't matter because, you know, Genesee will pick up the rest, right? Or Delafield will pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely,
It's
I mean, and the city of Delphio's administrator has said this, and he's correct, that in some ways that the way the funding formula works currently is that sort of the low dollar man wins, right? We have vetoes across the board. I guess in defense of, there is a contract that says CPI plus 2%, right? And so, you know, I think if the city was here, they would say, like, we followed it, we went above it last year, and now they're saying we're not willing to go above it again. And I guess they're taking a pass-the-hat approach to the town of Delafield to see if we're willing to chip in money to cover their portion. And my position has consistently been that we're not willing to do that. I think we all agreed that we're willing to look at a better long-term funding solution. But certainly a short-term fix where we donate money to the city is not something that I'm eager to support. Long-term, I think you're right, Joe, that you know, there has to be some level of consistency so the low man doesn't win. But I don't know. Much study needs to be done, right? I have no idea what the right answer is as to what it looks like, so we don't find ourselves here every year. I don't know that there's any upside for the town taking official action or weighing in any further on this tonight, but I leave it to you, Mr. Chairman, to guide us as to what you need or what you would like for further opinions.
Well, I think it's just a consensus of, you know, and direction for, you know, our administrator of what number we're gonna put in our budget.
It's for budgetary is why we're,
Yeah, the administrators of the communities are meeting on Wednesday. Hopefully I can or tomorrow actually. Hopefully I can get out of the office for an hour to discuss this very thing, to discuss what the communities have done. I know Wales tabled it because they wanted to see what other communities would do. I know Neshota just ran with the 50% funding formula change and put that into their budget. But they're not getting any direction, so they called me to ask what they should do with their budget. I always say go high and amend it later, but I think.
Is that from the administrator's handbook?
But in any case, we're going to meet and try and iron it out. The problem is they don't want to involve the fire chief because, you know, there's a huge bias there, of course, when he's involved with the meeting. But I mean, if we don't have community leaders, I don't really know what the administrators are going to accomplish, except that if we have, you know, the authority from the boards to say this is what we want to see, And I guess that's kind of a directive I'd like to see from you guys I mean, obviously, we want to support a 4-8 budget because we want to use the referendum money that we received, but if there's no real chance of that happening because of a stronghold of other community, do you want to see something where you do the CPI +2 and try and get to, a break-even budget through other means, or do you want to see a CPI +2 and say, hey, if that's what the city's contributing, that's what we're going to contribute under our current funding formula? What should I come back to that with? Because
I think my direction would be personally that if there's no, the tea leaves are saying, the city's just going to be CPI +2. I'm not living through last year all over again. And I don't want to play games and play gimmicks and hurt our opportunity to, take that CPI +2 adjustment either. So, I'd love to fund them at, 4-8, but we need to be able to sleep at night too, so.
I agree with Mr. Chairman. I'm not interested in the proposal from the city where we would pay more to cover their share. I am personally not interested in the 4-8 option. I think a more modest growth pattern for the expense on this particular line item in the budget, which, based off my look, was the largest line item in the budget. I think CPI +2%, if that's where we can go, then, and if we have a revised study coming that helps us on a better long-term or 5-year plan, then that's where I would go as well.
And just so you understand, the 4-8 number came based off of our referendum and based on how we can extend the referendum monies we have through both 25 and 26 potentially, where they can still hire people, because we did go to referendum in the pretense of hiring people. So that would have added 2 positions for 2025 and then potentially added 2 more positions in 2026, depending on what that CPI number looked like, or what the break-even budget number would be for 2026, which, based on the union contracts, it looks like a lot of those are 10% increases each year for a lot of their step increases. So that was the premise of the 4-8 budget.
Well, and what does it look like if we do the 4-8 budget, the third party comes back and says, well, gee, maybe this funding formula is a little skewed. At that point, I can plant my flag just as firmly as the city of Delafield that we don't want to move off of the current contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know what the study's going to show, right?
Correct.
We have no idea. I think it was a 5-0 vote that we all agreed that we're willing to look at this in good faith.
Sure.
And I think that's how we'll read it.
And that's what I'm saying is, in good faith is the frustration for me.
And I think that conversation was had when Ed and I were at a meeting with the other communities. Was, we're showing good faith in that we're willing to even do this and to try and come up with a new funding formula if that's what happens. And we expected to have some good faith from them based on some of the comments that I heard from their staff, and they didn't. And that I will bring that point up again in tomorrow's meeting. But
I personally
we
feel
are.
very comfortable with our constructive approach, around this issue. So I agree with your.
You're on the front lines, so you got to be comfortable with it. The rest of us just get to sit here and talk. You do all the work here, so.
No, I would agree with your positions in this.
Well, and I would say it's worth.
We're doing
Okay.
the right thing by, having a third party looking into this formula and figuring out if it's
And I
sustainable or not.
thoroughly agree with that. It's just the problem is how do we get over the hump until we get the answer, right?
Well,
And that's exactly what's in front of us, and that's the frustrating thing, is that there's clearly a no desire to make a short-term adjustment for a pending balance of a 5-year contract, right? 5 more years, right? And I think that's what's frustrating me the most, is that, when you look at the process of hiring and you look at the question marks it leaves within people who would want to come to Lake Country Fire or to accept a job, and it's like, well, is this going to be here? Are there going to be cuts? Is there not? Is there going to continue to grow? You know, all of those things. If we aren't somewhere, if one community is holding us hostage to not get to the point where we can show to our fire department our willingness to continue a growth pattern, you know, I'm concerned of the impression that leaves for the currently employed firefighters we have.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the, you know, the permanent long-term damage that we're doing to a really good organization, so
There's no question about it. There's a lot of stress on the
Big
staff.
time.
yeah, so I mean, I would, you know.
Well, we
hopefully-
support the
hopefully
staff.
Dan can
yeah.
go to make it out of the office and go to the meeting tomorrow and report back, you know, how things went, and we can move forward.
That was the suggestion to make a motion to table the recommendation, or are we?
I think we
I
can
don't think we
table
have to
this
take-
item
yeah.
because it's eventually going to have to come back.
Right.
We're going to have to approve the budget at some point, so.
So, yeah, so I'd look for a motion to table it.
Motion to table the 2025 Lake Country Fire and Rescue operating and capital budget.
A second.
Motion and second to table the item. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion, it's tabled, 5-0. Discussion possible action on setting a budget public hearing date for Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 at 6:30 PM.
Do you just need to, like, just for a motion?
Motion
Yeah.
Do it.
Motion to approve setting a budget public hearing for Tuesday, November 12th at 6:30 PM.
Second.
Motion and second to set the public hearing for the budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion passes 5-0. Next item would be the unfinished business, remove from the table the residential lighting ordinance. Is there a motion to remove the residential lighting ordinance from the table?
There's not is there a further current update to anything?
Yeah.
To remove it? Oh.
Yeah, we got an update on it.
So we're just kind of, what are we doing?
So
Just
I'm
talking about this here?
Yeah.
I went ahead and just
Is there a
made
motion to remove it from the table first?
Oh, sorry.
motion to remove what?
To remove it from the table.
So we can discuss it.
Oh, okay, I motion to remove the lighting ordinance as from being tabled so we can discuss it.
A second.
Motion is second to remove from the table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. It's removed from the table. We can now discuss the lighting ordinance as proposed. I think,
I'm just going to hand these out.
Oh,
since we're
thank you.
talking, Because I just thought it was easier to look at them. Hang on, did I get that? Hang on.
While she's handing that, I'll give just a quick update. The ordinance that's before you is to amend section 18.06, para 13 of the municipal code regarding the creation of design standards for outdoor lighting in residential subdivisions. What this would do is give the power of the board to, when we're reviewing declarations and restrictions for new subdivisions, to impose lighting standards. They're basic lighting standards, but I think lighting standards that would solve a lot of the issues that we had been talking about over the past few months. Downward lit lighting, specific lighting fixtures that would shield lighting, and then measurements of foot candles from any property line. Similar to what we had proposed in our first ordinance, this would apply to new subdivisions. It's in the subdivision ordinance. It's not in our lighting ordinance. But the good thing about putting in chapter 18 is that they would be in the restrictions for subdivisions that would be maintained by their HOA. So similar to what we approved tonight, we would be able to set those standards for new subdivisions. This was a recommendation from the attorney. He had expressed concerns about enforcement as well. Even on the ordinance that we had proposed, just based on the fact that, you know, if you have restrictions on new homes, what is the definition of a new home? Is it a tear down and a rebuild? Is it a specific 50% improvement of a home? If there is a new home and you set lighting standards that are reviewed by the building inspector or the engineer, what happens if in 3 months they change a lighting fixture, which does not involve a building permit? And then how are those regulated? And then how is that fair and equal for the town? So those are some of his concerns. I know Tim was in that conversation as well as Ed, and they can add in any comments. But this is the recommendation from our attorney. To kind of get things kicked off in the right direction. And I know there's some discussion. I know Terry will have some comments on this. So.
Yeah, but
guess we let-
I think, you know, based on our discussion with our attorney, you know, there were a lot more questions than answered based on the previous ordinance that was in front of us. I think this is a good first step to try to create some standards in future residential subdivisions, or future phases of residential subdivisions. And, you know, we can still try to, you know, educate the public on lighting. And obviously, it was a good first step, you know, when we approved those high-wage restrictions. Supervisor Mahoney-Ogden, I know you got some comments you'd like to make.
Well, no, I thought that the first one that Tim worked on was pretty inclusive, but we didn't take it to a vote, and then I know we kind of switched to this, which is good. I just feel like is there a compromise? I just thought there were some areas where we could elaborate a little bit, since part of this, I think if somebody was reading this would be like, why am I doing this? So I think things like having down the intent, I think one of the original things that Tim, I thought I made you a copy of this too, just because you could read along, but no, I mean, I just typed up some notes. I don't know if it's easier, maybe I can share yours, but to have, you had down an intent, so I thought that would be like why we're doing it, would be for one thing. And because I think at that point, then we kind of help people understand the rationale. We're just trying to help with light pollution. We're trying to keep a rural character. We're trying to not have somebody's light affect the neighbor. So that's what, I just wrote down some suggestions that we could use to enhance what already came back up with. Again, not that any of this is horrible, it's just, I liked what he had originally, because I thought it also helped explain why we were doing it. So I just figured it'd be easier to kind of print some of the stuff that we originally wrote. We have that, we have the new ideas, and then I just wrote some comments. So we can kind of talk from there. And I just thought that might be an easier way to kind of bring it to light, especially now that we've got some new homes going. And I think we owe it to our neighbors to, we tried, I know when we were, you know, we met with Newman in the very, very beginning, that was their comment, is there wasn't a lighting ordinance. So I feel like it's our responsibility now to help the people who will be living near there to, especially now that there's going to be a lot more homes than I think what they originally, those people thought when they built their homes, there's just going to be a lot more homes. So how can we make the light impact not as significant for those around? So I'm willing to talk through any of these, or if you have any comments.
I think the ordinance that you all have been working on here looks very positive. I think this takes a step Supervisor Ivan's talking about of when these new homes in a subdivision, anytime there's a subdivision, it's more homes than were there before, are built. We have a set of standards that lay out that the adequate shielding is to reduce any potential light trespass. And we very clearly state our purpose, which is a benefit of health, general welfare, and safety of the town residents here in this ordinance. And we've got setback shielding and maximum allowable lumens. So I think this is correctly captures the idea of that if there's new homes, they've got to not pollute others. So.
And I guess my clarity on this is, so this is specifically around new homes in like an HOA scenario, and that the enforcement of this is on the shoulders of the HOAs that's established. Is that correct?
Well, and that was one of my clarifications. I felt like that the title wasn't quite correct. I think it should read, I think I put a note on there later on, I think it should read newly constructed homes or, you know, where electrical modifications are met. I don't think it has to be a subdivision, because not everybody's going to be a high ridge and have it. I think there's going to be other subdivisions that are going to be
Yeah.
coming in our area. There's going to be new homes that are going to be built. I feel like we should be consistent, start somewhere, take a leap, and have it be any new home or
This is
any
where it's
subdivision.
deviating from what's being recommended by our,
Yeah, I think in the discussions with the attorney that there were concerns about the enforceability of like a new home or a tear down or a build, like how would you define that? I think what's in front of us is a good first step. Obviously, the next step, if this board decide, would be a public hearing to hear from the public on how they feel about what is being presented or what's being, discussed and, being worked through the town board. And, I mean, honestly, that's kind of where I'd like to see this go this evening would be to, schedule a public hearing and let's, advertise it and let's hear from our citizens on, whether they think this is enough or goes far enough or doesn't go far enough. And then based on our feedback from our citizens, we can, have a discussion and see where we want to go.
I think that's a great suggestion. I think we've taken it as far as we should without getting public input, right?
Do you, I mean, the attorney, this is his suggestion, but we certainly know it's our group, and I know Tim had just said he was looking for more direction from us, and I think we've given him mixed, we've each come up with things, and we've been giving him mixed paths. So would you take the time to read this? Was there anything on here that we think that we can add to the existing, what's been proposed? Is there anything in here?
relatively fine with this as it applies to a new development of an HOA because it takes the enforcement, which is my major concern, and off of our shoulders. And specifically, I would call to attention the issues and added work and problems surrounding our sign code that is generating just as much or more work than is necessary. And I feel like that's a perfect example of what happens when we have some enforcement issues and where it's a problem that would be put onto someone in the town's shoulders. If you're talking, if you remove this from just new homeowner associations that are looking to apply it to everyone in the town, then I am not interested in that. If you're talking about this is the application to a new development and homeowners association, then I am interested in pursuing this.
Yes, I disagree with you. I feel like this ordinance should apply to every new construction, no matter the scale of it is,
I
whether
mean,
it's
that's
a big
fine.
subdivision or just simply a new home.
Sure, we can
in a-
disagree. I
In
think
a
that-
neighborhood, I think it should be consistent across the board.
I think the recommendation that was suggested by our attorney was exactly some of the enforceability and definitions and the problems that I have with it when you put it down as a ordinance that applies to everything that is new in the town. So I think when you have a body like the High Ridge subdivision that has decided to do their own enforcement and adjustments to their
great.
to their
Yeah.
HOA, more power to them. Fantastic, awesome, leading the way. And unless there is a job and a budget that is proposed to be able to have someone go out and enforce this, I'm not interested in applying this to or putting the enforcement and application on the shoulders of the town.
I was hoping that more people could have heard him speak, because I did ask the Shaniqua person who enforces it. I said, I know that our town, some of my constituents are concerned about enforcement. And the comment there, and I know Shaniqua is not the town of Delafield, but, we're all people in the community, we're all trying to do the right thing. His comment was that, really when he approached somebody, most people, I do think this is a totally different issue than signs. Most people are, they're not even really that aware that they're doing it, because for how many years they just turn their light on and that's just what they do. So he said that most people are actually interested and not or not upset that they're, oh, really? Okay, I didn't really quite realize it. And especially new people, because they're being sold new homes and everybody wants to light up their home. So he just said a lot of it was, we've talked about education. I don't think it's the end of the world to try. And I feel like we need to just try as opposed to
Well, but
not.
when
So
you try,
that's-
you put it on the books, and then when does it come off? Or it doesn't come off? right? I mean, that's my concern. And
Well, we have a
then,
date when the
Shaniqua-
ordinance,
We already removed the existing homes out of this ordinance, and now we're literally targeting
anything
new
new.
developments. Like, I thought we were all in agreement that it would be new homes, new
Right,
constructions.
and I'm.
No matter
I-
what
This
the scale it is,
specifically is
right?
talking about the land division and development control entitled Design Standards, subsection 13 entitled Outdoor Lighting, right? And so that's specifically around land development and controls, and so, and
But we
with
could
the-
change it and have it say any new resident, not just a subdivision.
yeah,
It could
I
say
think-
I mean, I
resident.
see new developments in residential subdivisions. To me, it's pretty clear that we're talking about a group of homes in the same,
Right,
in the
so
same
an HOA,
location.
Yeah, in HOA, right. So, but if you have a new home, it's, again, whether the definition of a new home is a tear down and rebuild or not, or what, right? I mean, we already talked about in impact fees, you don't, hey, they don't count it as a new home if, as regards to impact fees, right? So what is a new home? If it's a tear down and rebuild, is that a new home? And who makes that decision and why is it
If
different?
if electrical
I would personally think so.
modifications
hold
are
on,
being
so-
made, so
but
that's how
the-
this would apply. So I
Right.
think we're kind of all over the map, but I think,
I
Tim,
don't
can
think
you
so. I
clarify
mean, I think when
the
you're
title?
talking about the develop, we can't, who enforces it? That's the biggest thing I can continue to come back to, right? This I can get behind because now you've got your neighbor who lives within a quarter mile of your house that says, hey, this is the rule for our development. This is the rule for the place that you live, right? You're out of compliance on this. We'd appreciate if you fix it. Wonderful, right? If there's not that, then who from
I
the
think it
town?
self-polices. I think you get a complaint, and then at least you'll
So how
be
is it
able to say, oh, as of this date, you're right, this
Well,
date.
I think, though, that our sign ordinance has really opened our eyes to how difficult, and the fact that we don't have a full-time police department, and it's really just, we got a very thin crew here. So I think a lot of the things that you have written here in your comments, Supervisor Ogden, are really good items that could go into like an educational piece to meet with these HOAs and try to educate them on lights and light pollutions and encourage them to follow what High Ridge did to, you know, self-police their lighting and educate them on their lighting. And, you know, really, I think that, you know, there's a huge opportunity for education for individuals on how they light, why they have lights on, how, you know, what Kelvins to use, you know, how to stay away from the really bright LED lights and the shields. But I think this is a good first step, and we can have advertise a public hearing and let the community come and, you know, tell us whether it goes far enough or doesn't go far enough, or if they want it to, you know, apply to, you know, tear downs and rebuilds, or you know, how far they want it to go. But I think that, you know, the town has never really tackled lighting in the past, you know, and, you know, it's just a good
So if
first
we had a
step.
public hearing, it's going to be just on this? I mean, I feel like it would just be simply on this. That's why I feel like you'd almost want to have all these things written down and say, these are things that we're talking about in a public hearing, and then let the public, they might say, no, I want to have really bright lights on my house. So, I mean, if we're just keeping it on this, there's really not a lot of huge opportunity to say much. I feel like, why wouldn't we just talk about all the things with lighting and then see what they say? Maybe you're right, there's no interest. I mean, so why wouldn't we put more things out there? We're talking about lighting, here are some issues, if we're gonna be doing a public hearing? Do we have to do it just based on this?
No,
I think it's based on, hey, the town of Delafield wants to, you know, regulate, you know, residential lighting, you know, I mean, are you gonna come in and say, you know, I'm a property owner, property rights first, if I wanna, you know, light my house up like, you know, a Supermax Prism, or a Walmart, or a Target, that's my right and that's my prerogative, and it doesn't matter that, you know, it's taken away from the peaceful, you know, enjoyment of my neighbor's property? Or, you know, are there gonna be people who come in who say, yeah, you know, I have concerns about my neighbor's lights, and, you know, I've talked to them, and, you know, maybe it's okay for the town to start regulating, you know, lights, to have a hook, to do that, but I don't really know what the temperature of the town's folks are. I mean, we're seeing right now what the, you know, what the county's doing on the, you know, this proposed sales tax thing. So, I mean, I think, you know, it's a time to have, you know.
Well, so I like the idea of a public hearing. So is the public hearing truly like, come and talk to us, what do you feel like? Or is it just comment on these few things we have here? That's what I guess I'm trying to
Really,
figure out.
how do you feel about residential lighting? Like,
Okay, so
like,
it's
is-
very vague. It's not gonna be
Here's-
specifically
It's not
in
vague,
this.
it's specifically to the ordinance that we would bring forward. So we would have this published, and then we'd have a public hearing, people would have 3 minutes to speak on this. If that turns into 3 minutes of ranting about one thing or the other related to lighting, so be it. We've had similar public hearings. But it would be, the premise would be to adopt or to change section 18.06, 13 of the town code. And if you're talking about new home construction, chapter 18 is not the place to do it.
Right.
It would be under chapter 11, which is our current lighting standards. So if you're looking at new construction homes in general, this won't do it. You'd have to go back to chapter 11 and look at what we had drafted and
And that's what I
Examine it.
think we should do. I think we should work off of what we kinda had and do
Chapter
a
11 wouldn't
compromise.
trigger a public hearing though, would it?
no, we could just change it.
I just.
Or we do both. Have lighting standards for subdivisions that would be enforced by the HOA, and then have similar lighting standards. I would say they should almost match 100% for new construction.
Supervisor Ogden, Supervisor Miller, this is a slam dunk. Like, guys, hold a public hearing, pass it before they construct a single home in the Thomas Farm. Let's get the lighting standard on
I was gonna say,
the board. We can
this-
change
like,
chapter
this-
11 anytime we want. We can add new standards to it anytime we want. Guys, like, let's
Well,
do this.
I agree.
So we
This is
limit it.
easy peasy.
Yeah, let's
I
do
just-
it.
I just feel like, I don't feel like it's enough. If we are desperate to get something in place because we didn't do it originally, then shame on us. That's why, we had the opportunity when we were approving it to tell them what to do, but we didn't. So if we have to do this in the time being, yes. I want to just, Tim wanted to get our feeling of, do you have any opinions on, if you just look at these one by one?
Yeah, my
for the future?
my opinions on this are consistent with the last time we did 11, that it is a bridge too far from me for the town government to impose this much restriction on the personal property owner as it relates to lights. Perhaps over time, the world will change and I'll change with it, but it's a lot. Like, this is what we want. We don't want new homes with big lights, and that's what I said I was comfortable starting with from the start. The rest of it looks a bit oppressive to me
So
as
even
it
else,
relates
can we
to
at least
lights.
talk about, let's say specifically dusk to dawn? Can we just at least talk about that one? Because that's, does anybody? have
I
an
don't
opinion?
support Dusk to Dawn, and I have not heard from the public or anyone else that there's widespread support out there for it. I mean, if there's some future date where we would like to hold an informational session
As of right now.
about Dusk to Dawn, that's fine, but
Right now, according to this thing, they can all still do dusk to dawn. We're not saying that they have to turn the lights off at 11, but according to this, they can still do dusk to dawn.
yeah, I mean, it's your house. If you want to leave a light on at night, you can leave a light on at night. That's the way it's worked here forever. That's the way it works in, man, the majority of municipalities, got to be in the entire country. I'm not familiar with the stats on who limits lights. I know that this is a in vogue thing for some municipalities to do, but the standard has always been that if you have a light, you can leave it on. There's nuisance laws that prevent it from being too big, and the town's taking the next step that's saying, we're going to have some shielding and some setbacks for new homes that are constructed. So I appreciate your push on this, Supervisor Ogden. I don't think for your cause you should allow good to get in the way of what is your great. I know that you're not going to stop. I know this is everything you want, but don't let really common sense regulations for the Welshire Farms neighborhood get stopped because we're debating something very, very broad. That's my only 2 cents.
And my next question was going to be, would this apply to Welshire Farms?
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah,
it's complicated. I would have a conversation with the developer in the intent that we would move forward with this ordinance and ask them to comply with this ordinance. Because as it stands now, we've approved their SDP, we've approved their final plat, and they've made applications for their final plat for the future. Now, we could stick to these if they are adopted and say, well, any final plat going forward, we're gonna stipulate these. But there's a level of fairness that our attorney stated could potentially be an issue. But I think that the standards that we're talking about, we can have a conversation with the developer to say, hey, these are the lighting standards that we're looking at. They're not crazy. They should be followed in any rate because, you know, they're pretty comprehensive, and they actually would fit what we've already approved for their docks, because I don't believe their lighting.
I don't think these are out of step with
No.
what we enforced and
So
looked closely at in the
I
HOA
think
documents.
they would work with the town on meeting these requirements and put
He
them
already
in.
said he would, because he said he did say that if we had a lighting
Oh,
ordinance.
yeah,
they would-
well, lighting ordinance is different, but I think he would work with the town with these standards. I think if we were to do these standards and put them in this, he would probably push back a little bit more and have a fight and could potentially win. I think that what we're asking for is pretty reasonable, based on what we've approved for their restrictions for their covenants.
Again,
At least for their phase
Personally, don't
one,
wanna be
right? I mean,
unreasonable
Phase
about
one,
this,
yeah,
this
phase two.
ordinance here. I think it's reasonable overall, but I will bring up chapter 11 after, if this passes.
Okay, well,
So-
we don't have a police force. We don't have a full-time police force. We're not Shaniqua. Unless, like, again, I will hang my hat on this. It's not a surprise. You're not
Okay.
gonna change that. Like, that's my problem with things that are not enforceable by an HOA. So this, cool, fine.
I think this is a good first step,
Yeah,
and we can discuss
right.
chapter 11.
it doesn't stop you guys from
No.
Yep.
it's
pursuing
not-
your future interests, right? It's something that you, quite frankly, you
And
both
you
should.
don't feel any of these things here. All I'm asking at is use this, and how
All right,
can we
I
give
quit.
it a little more substance?
Terry, what if we created some type of a pamphlet, like a trifold pamphlet for people when they get their building permits, that have these as recommendations or as good steps
Good
to follow,
practices.
good practices of the town to be a good neighbor. And if it is really a thing where, you know, communities will work together and they'll resolve the issues on their own, maybe that's a step to, you know, something that they can follow, but not necessarily an ordinance that has to be enforced.
And I'm
But a
totally
good
fine with that.
recommendation.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely education. I've all along said that we should do something with that. I just am
Because
feeling
this
that
is a-
we
this
we
is
lost
babies-
our opportunity when we had it, and you're gonna have so many houses next to each other, next to subdivisions that don't look like that, and there's no limit on how many lights they can put. I remember even when that was one of my suggestions before we approved it, is I thought we should have limited how many landscape lights, that we should have done it right then. but
We couldn't
didn't.
have done it without having something like this. That's the point. As we had nothing in our chapter 18 that
Something to
says that
hang
we
your
can
hat
do
on.
any restrictions on lighting on somebody's HOA. So this gives us the
Yeah.
means to do it. And I think that's a first step in
Yeah.
what we're trying to accomplish. And then let education piece be an education piece, and perhaps down the road, if we get to the point where we have a good enforcement mechanism, or who knows, we have, you know, 3 full-time sheriff's deputies, then maybe we can do something like that.
Well, if you oppose the supervisor document, perhaps we should just table it and not bring it back up. I don't know. We could vote it down, or we can take it to a public hearing for passing.
I think I'm good with taking it to a
No,
public
I think
hearing.
I think the next step would be to, if the board agrees, to take it to a public hearing.
That's great. I don't think we need to vote on
have the public
that.
know that they have options and that it doesn't have, I mean, and how we can educate the public a little bit more about it too before they come in to know that.
Okay, motion to post a public hearing for ordinance to create section 18.06 paren 13 of the town Delafield Municipal Code to create design standards for outdoor lighting in residential subdivisions.
A second.
Second, to schedule the public hearing for the ordinance to section 1806. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Request to
I'm
schedule.
abstaining for now because it's not
Schedule
exactly
a
what I want.
public hearing. So it's 4 ayes and 1 abstention? Mm-hmm. Okay. Next item would be announcements and planning items. There will be a plan commission meeting next week, Tuesday at 6:30 in this room. Halloween trick-or-treat hours for the town of Delafield will be on Halloween, Thursday, October 31st, from 4 to 7 p.m. There's an election on Tuesday, November 5th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. In-person absentee voting started today. Clerk, Treasurer, Administrator Green said there were over 600 folks today that
Nice.
casted their ballots.
Great.
And then the next town board meeting will be Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 at 6:30 or immediately following the budget public hearing. I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned 5-0.
Do you need this? You don't need to sign it. This is yours. Ed, this is yours.